Hello, I'm Nathalie Dupree. Today's menu is like the bride's formula for luck. Something old, something new, something borrowed, but there's nothing blue. In fact, I don't think there are any naturally blue foods, not even blueberries. But this food is yellow, and that's what makes it so new. I have 2½ cups of bread flour in my food processor, 1½ teaspoons of sugar, and a tablespoon of curry powder, a teaspoon of salt, and a package of active dry yeast. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of butter and a cup of hot water. Now, if you have the flour and the yeast in a food processor or in a bowl, and you're adding hot water already, then what you do, that's my extra flour, then you need to have your hot water at 125 to 135 degrees. But if you proof your yeast first, in other words, if you dissolve your yeast first straight in the water, then the water can't be above 105 to 115 degrees. Yeast needs heat in order to develop and grow and rise. The other ingredients protect the yeast from the higher temperature that's in here, where if it's straight in the water, the lower temperature allows it to grow but doesn't kill it because yeast kills it. Now you let this go about a minute. You add flour as you need it, both knead and knead, until you have a dough that's soft and tender like a baby's bottom. And then when it takes about a minute, and then when it's doubled, you take it out and you put it in an oiled plastic bag. And this could go just a second longer, but I'll just show you this here on the counter. You want it to be nice and smooth and lightly sticky. This could have just a smidgen more flour, I believe, but it'll be all right. And then you put it into your oiled plastic bag or into an oil bowl that you have a plastic cover on. And I do reuse those bags. Now, when it's doubled, and this is it doubled, you punch it down, and you can see that this is a loose dough. And that's what happens when you don't get quite as much flour in it. In fact, you have to be careful because you may not get the shape you want if you don't have enough flour in it, but we'll see here. And when it's doubled, you put 2 fingers in it and it doesn't come back, it's okay. But here's how you rescue a dough that's like the one that I just did. If it is in fact too loose, which this is, just knead in a little bit more flour, just like you've got it right now. Then take it and put it onto a greased pan and shape it into a round. Now I'm going to pull this over so you can see it over here. Make a hole the size of a small can in the center, just like this. Oil a tube or an empty can, see, and put it in the hole. And this is a tomato paste can. They're the best size. Then you cut a circle 1 inch deep and 1 inch from the can, just like that, if you wanted to make a special design. I'm just making a design here. And then you cut it. It should be about 1/4 inch deep or else it won't last when it rises. And then you make slashes from the circle to the edge. But you can just omit that circle if you'd like to. And if you don't make it deep enough, it won't show. Let me show it to you on the risen one. See, it doesn't quite show, but it does make it clear that the slashes are just up to a certain point. And that sort of scallops the edges there. It's really nice. If you want to make more of a scallop, you can actually indent just like that with your knife. I wonder if you can see that. See, you can just push in just like that. Now you let it double, and then you heat the oven to 350 degrees. Now, if you choose just to bake it as a plain round like this, you can do that. But you have to put this in first so that it grows up around it. Now you mix an egg and a tablespoon of water for a glaze and brush it on your dough and preheat your oven. Bake it at 350 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. And then you remove the can, and I'll show you how to do that. But don't let it intimidate you the first time that you're making it. If you want to just see how you like it and you're afraid of that can, do it plain like that one. And here you are, you remove your can, pretty easy, and cool it on a rack. And there you go. While it's baking, cream a cup of softened butter, and then stir in some mint, which is just wonderful. Gives it a lovely accompaniment of a mint butter with that curry. It's great. Now, the reason I was thinking about brides at all is for this pea stew soup, because last summer, my foster daughter, Audrey, who moved in with me when she was in her late teens, got married in France in a very small town called Roussillon. We had to take a train down from Avignon, and when we got there, her mother-in-law-to-be had fixed this soup, and it's from the Simply Smart section of the book, and I think you'll like it, and that's exactly what it is, Simply Smart. Makes enough for 8 or 10, but it freezes very well without the Parmesan added. So let me first of all tell you this. What I've got here is I've got some onions cooking in the pan. This is a great place to use your leftover Parmesan rinds, by the way. Chop an onion and slice a leek, and peel and chop a potato in 2-inch pieces. And here it is, the potato. The leek and is in here cooking. Now I've got a tomatoes chopped here, and snap the beans in 2-inch pieces. And I'll show you all that in just a little while. Now your cup of chopped onion and your sliced leek are in here cooking away until soft. And you add a cup of green beans, and a cup of butter beans or lima beans, and a cup of potatoes. That's all cut into the cubes there. And 1½ cups of tomatoes, and 8 cups of chicken stock that should be at the boil when you add it to the green ingredients. Either that or bring your onion and leek to the boil. Cook your onion and leek, add your stock, bring it up to the boil, and then add all these ingredients to the boiling stock. Simmer it 15 minutes. Then when it's nice and simmered, you add some vermicelli, about 1/2 cup, or some other small pasta shape. This has been broken up in little pieces. I thought we were hot and tired. We'd taken this train. We'd been on it 4 hours, and even though it's a wonderful fast train, it really, here are the Parmesan rinds I mentioned. Put it in here. We had to rent a car in Avignon and drive to Roussillon, and when we got there, we just were beat. And this is the kind of a soup, even in the hottest summer, that picks you up and makes you feel terrific. So I'll always think of it, and it was the night before Audrey got married, and it was just a real pick-me-up. It was just fabulous. Now, you cook it until the pasta's done and until the vegetables are soft, and you season it with salt and pepper. Here's my new gadget, which I truly love. Check it for salt and pepper. Now, meanwhile, chop some garlic and some basil and thyme, and put 2 tablespoons of tomato puree in a bowl. And you whisk in 1/4 cup of olive oil, just like you were making mayonnaise. So you should add it just a little more slowly than I did. And then you add these 2 garlic cloves and 2 tablespoons of chopped basil and 2 teaspoons of chopped thyme. And you stir that into the soup just before you're ready to serve it. It just gives it this flush of flavor, and that's really the pea stew, which is kind of the French connection to pesto, which we all know and love so well. And then you sprinkle, I've sprinkled individual servings, but you can also sprinkle your soup here with Parmesan cheese. And that Parmesan is the only thing that doesn't really freeze. Now you would pull those Parmesan rinds out, but if you had some left over from Parmigiano Reggiano, that's what you would want to do. Now let me show you Bob Lynn's bread salad, which is just terrific. The first thing that you want to do is to heat a grill or broiler and slice a pound of hoagie rolls in half. And this is the kind of hoagie roll that I like. There are all sorts of kinds on the market, so I had to be specific with you and let you actually see it, although I know you could figure it out yourself. You'd be saying, what should I buy? You brush on 1/4 cup of olive oil. And it's best if you can grill the bread. I'll show it to you. It's over here. It's best if you can grill it so that you get some real dark, almost burned strips in there. It just adds so much flavor to it. So try to get the grill marks on it. And then tear it into 1 to 2 inch chunks, which I've got here. And see, there's some nice brown pieces right here. That's what you really want. And this one was grilled, where those are probably just broiled. And put them in a bowl and drizzle it with a cup of chicken stock. I love a bread salad. It's something kind of new to me, and I truly enjoy it. Bob Lynn develops recipes for a chain of food called Houston's, and he came and we cooked together and made some, took some lessons and some things he didn't know and I didn't know. Put 5 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar in a food processor or in a bowl with a whisk, and you could make that bread by hand too. And then add 2 teaspoons of red wine vinegar and 5 tablespoons of lemon juice, 1/2 teaspoon of Tabasco, You're just making a nice little vinaigrette here, and a tablespoon of Dijon mustard, and slowly whisk in a cup of olive oil for your dressing. So just put all this in together here. And then you drizzle a little of this over your bread. Now that's going to make it emulsified dressing, which is what this looks like. It kind of looks like a mayonnaise. So you just drizzle this over your bread, a little of it, and then you cook 4 garlic cloves and 4 minced shallots in 1/4 of a cup of olive oil until they're translucent but not browned, and you add them to the bread. And plump a cup of dried currants in 2 teaspoons each of red wine vinegar and water. You just want them to be nice and tender and full. And then a 1/2 cup of pine nuts. And you can use sunflower seeds if these are too pricey for what you're planning to do. And so all of these are added to the bread. You've got your currants drained and dry, your cup of currants. And then let's go ahead and add a tablespoon of your pine nuts and a tablespoon of kosher salt and 2 teaspoons of cracked black pepper. Just toss all of that. And you can make that several days in advance. It's just terrific. Then, just before you're ready to serve it, and actually this does last a few more days, but the gourmet foodies will get me if I say you can do this with the arugula several days in advance. You tear your arugula and store it in a plastic bag. And arugula is really a newcomer on the culinary scene for the last 10 years in America. Although you see it a lot in Europe, it's only recently that we see it here. You can get it in my local grocery store, but it's in the herb section, not in the lettuce section in my store. So then you toss the bread with 3 cups of this torn arugula, and you serve it immediately with the dressing on the side. But don't tell the foodies that I told you this, but the reality is that in fact you can serve this the next day, even with the arugula in it, and people will still love it. I've got just a minute more to show you how to chop some of these things. So here's my leek, and it should be cleaned under running water. And you can cut into it like this to be sure to get your water in it, particularly if you're going to chop it. And then cut like that, and then slice on down. Here are my green beans, just tipped and tailed. And those butter beans, by the way, can be fresh or frozen. Here is Parmigiano Reggiano to be grated. Here is some thyme. Here are the tomatoes that can be diced or cut into large chunks. And you can peel this for 6 seconds in boiling water and then run it into cold water if you want to peel your tomato. And that's diced. And then here are your potatoes that can be done, and your onion that can be chopped as well. And now here's something I think you'd like to learn about. If nicknames are a sign of affection, then the blue crab is well loved. What is a blue crab if not a peeler, a Sally, a Jimmy, a Buster, and best of all, a soft-shelled crab? Soft-shelled crabs are blue crabs in disguise, or out of disguise, I suppose. Each time these feisty crustaceans grow too large, they just pop their old shells off and harden new ones. In between, they spend a few short hours living life as a soft-shelled crab, a delicacy we humans find hard to resist. So, how do you catch these crabs? Just when they have their shells down. Well, the crabs give themselves away. This man is scraping for blue crabs in the Chesapeake Bay along Maryland's eastern shore. He's looking for peelers, crabs ready to molt, to lose their shells. He can tell how close they are by the color of one of their back fins. Here's another way to catch peelers during mating season, using crab traps. The female peelers, called Sallies, only mate when they're in the soft shell stage. That means in the spring the Sallies are particularly interested in finding Jimmies, the male crabs. These watermen know a thing or two about romance, so they bait the traps at that particular time with Jimmies to catch Sallies. However they're caught, the sorted-out peelers find themselves on the way to the crab packing houses. Here, the crabs are put into separate tanks, depending on how close they are to losing their shells. Crabs whose shells are splitting are called busters. They're busting out of the shell. Now the wait begins. There's an easy way to tell the males from the females. Turn them over. Crabs have a place on their stomachs called an apron. The males have a narrow apron. The immature females have a more triangular shape, which evolves to a rounder, fuller shape when mature. Finally, the moment arrives. The shell cracks open and the buster backs out and becomes a soft shell. If the crabs stayed in the water, their shells would harden back, but they're taken out and packed in ice or refrigerated, so the shells stay soft. As delightful and tender as these soft shells are, there are a few parts you don't want to eat. Cut off the eyes and mouth, then cut out one gill and then the other. These are called dead men's fingers. Finally, turn the crab over and cut off the apron. Of course, you can buy crabs already dressed, fresh or frozen. Soft shells are also sold by size. State regulations may vary. Here, the smallest are called mediums. Then we have hotels, primes, and jumbos. And what do they call the largest soft-shell crabs? Why, they're called whales, of course.
For nearly a century, LeCreuset's colorful French cookware has been a favorite in kitchens around the world. From its bold finishes and uncompromised quality to its easy-to-clean materials, the brand's range of iconic products are as easy to use as they are to love.
I long ago determined that I was not going to snip the eyes from these crabs because I got so many letters once when I did it. The original recipe for the soft-shelled crab dish serves 2, so I've tripled it today. But in that wonderful old-time pea stew soup recipe that I served, it served a lot more people, but you can just freeze half or all of it if you'd like. These crabs are usually sold ready to clean and ready to cook, and they're cleaned. So just go ahead and clean and dry 12 soft-shelled crabs. Now meanwhile, heat 6 tablespoons of oil and 9 tablespoons of butter until singing. Or actually get enough butter to cover the bottom of your pan. That's what you're really trying to do, and come up just a little ways, but you're not trying to deep fat fry these crabs. They're not very thick. And you put the crabs, their top side down, into the very hot fat and saute them a few minutes on each side. And I'll put these in here now, and I'm afraid that this fat is not as hot. I had it turned on, and then I forgot I turned it off, but you'll hear it singing in just a second. When they're browned on the first side, you turn it. And it's just a couple of minutes on each side, and see, that's nice and browned there. Here comes the singing. I love the sound of cooking. You know, you cook with your ears as well as your eyes and your nose, and it smells good in here too. And then when they're brown on both sides, you remove them. And then in a separate pan, or in the same pan, if you, once you've got all the crabs out, you saute 9 tablespoons of slivered almonds in 6 tablespoons of butter. And so you just saute them here. And then you pour them over the crab, which is all here in this platter, and you serve it at once. And it's really a delicious dish. Now, the nice thing about this particular meal is that you can have your soup in the freezer and then just defrost it overnight in the refrigerator and reheat it in the microwave or on top of the stove if you need to. And then you hit the door running and you saute your soft-shelled crab just after people's had their soup. The zucchini and carrot combination is a great starter for a side dish, and I like it very much. I've increased the amounts in this recipe from the book as well. Now you take 2 zucchini and lay them on a serving platter, and I just thought I'd show you what we found in the market today, because when I say 2 zucchini, you have to kind of use your judgment about which is which. Certainly if you're serving this as a starter, you might like these tiny little bite-sized zucchini, but obviously if you were serving it as a side dish, or I'm going to turn off that fat here, if you were serving it as a side dish, those soft-shell crab are spitting fat at me, very unattractive. So I turned them off. If you want to serve it as a side dish, then you'd want the bigger zucchini. Now, it's very simple. Chop basil and thyme. I've got here is oregano, and I'm going to just go ahead and chop it. That looks like a real sad little basil. If it is, let me just smell it. Or else a giant oregano, I think that's what it is, and some thyme, parsley, whatever you'd like, and chop them all together. And I'll just take the knife, get this thyme off the stem. I think that's the hard part, and just work your knife until the small pieces fall to the bottom. See, then you just take your knife and move it, and then the small pieces are there, and then you just work on your larger pieces. But the point is to chop it until it's just like dust. And I have a wonderful sharp knife. They give me such nice sharp knives to use. I'm really grateful. And go ahead and grate 3 carrots, either by hand or in a food processor. And I think you all know how to do that. And you should peel them first with this great carrot peeler. I'm just delighted that I have discovered that gadget. And just grate them. You want a small grate, obviously, not a nice long grate. And then you whisk together in a bowl 2 tablespoons of oil, a half a tablespoon of wine vinegar or lemon juice, whatever you'd like, 1.5 tablespoons, half as much, and salt and pepper. I've got all that, salt, and I do have my my battery pepper grinder. It has a light on it, a flashlight on it, so if you want a romantic interlude, you always have your light from your pepper grinder. Okay, and then you go ahead and add your herbs and the grated carrots and toss it lightly. And then you just mound your carrots. I've got some made ahead, but this doesn't take but a second just to show you this. And you mound your carrots right on the zucchini. And it's a nice little bite. Isn't that nice? A little healthy thing there for you. And chill them until you're ready for them. Cover them with plastic wrap. Now, another old dish, as well as the pea stew. This was named for Anna Pavlova, who was the Russian ballerina. And both Australia and New Zealand claim this dish. Preheat your oven to 250 degrees. It's real low. And grease a 9-inch pie plate, or if you'd like, a baking sheet with parchment paper. You don't have to flour it if you use this no-stick stuff, which I have gotten into the habit of doing. And I always whip my egg whites in a copper bowl. I want to show you this, particularly for this, because overbeating, when it causes the egg whites to be rocky, overbeating causes them to expand too fast, and you just don't get a stable egg. So clean your copper bowl just before you whip with vinegar and salt, and then you rinse it and then you dry it. And I just happened like magic to have another one down here. You have 3 egg whites in stiff peaks. Now let's just see how this has been doing, because it's been sitting under the counter, and you see it starts to lose its oomph when it's been under the counter, and it just doesn't have the personality that it should, but it's there. Egg whites don't last long, but they last longer in a copper bowl than anything else, so that's going to be fine. There we are. So that means it's at a nice stiff peak. And then you go ahead. Now, if that was not if it was overbeaten or if it had been sitting too long, sometimes you can rescue it by adding another egg white, which I had here as a sort of a rescue operation, and you can whip that back up again, but I'm not going to need to do that. And then you beat in 3/4 a cup of sugar. Looks like a lot to me, but I'll trust whoever measured it. I have a great staff. 3/4 a cup of sugar, and 1 teaspoon at a time until they're stiff and shiny. But you can also fold it in all at once if you work real hard. But if you do beat it, fold it all in at once, as I have just done when you beat it, you have to really be working the whole time. Then beat in 1 teaspoon of cornstarch. You have more luck if you fold all of your sugar in at once if you are in a copper bowl. And for meringues, I like the grittiness, and I fold in all mine at one time. This is a tablespoon of cornstarch, and then you have 1.5 teaspoons of white wine vinegar, or white vinegar, or 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar, and then you add a teaspoon of vanilla. I didn't get all that cornstarch out of there, so let me get it all in here. I just dumped, and I see it there. And then you mound this into your non-stick bowl or pan, pie plate here. Anything that's heat-proof will do, really. But if you want to be able to move it around, then you have to have it on parchment or a really non-stick surface. And then you hollow out the center. Now this becomes its own bowl. And I hope yours is just a little firmer than mine. Do as I say, not as I do. Or as they say around here, don't do as I say, do as I want. So Bake it at 250 degrees for 1¼ to 1½ hours. It gets very lightly brown, and I'm going to show you two here so you can see the color difference, so that you can, really it's not even very hot in this oven, so that you can decide. Meringues, you know, are supposed to be classically white, and but these two are different colors. This one's lighter than that one, and I kind of like the little browner one more than I do the pale white one as opposed to a meringue, because this is not a meringue, this is a pavlova. Now, just before you serve it, and by the way, I went to Australia a couple of years ago and I got it served at just one time, and I was so disappointed. I kept thinking I'd see variations, and I never did. And that was for a wedding too. Whip a cup of heavy cream to firm peaks, add sugar to taste, and then I've just got some sliced tropical fruits here, the kind that you would see over there, the famous kiwi fruit, and some strawberries and pineapples. Australia has a number of wonderful women chefs. I truly enjoyed it, particularly in Adelaide. And you fold all the whipping cream and the fruits all together and pile them in the center of the meringue. I think that's because they don't have such a strong European male chef tradition, because they're a young country. Pile them in the center, and there you are. It's really marvelous. And if you have some extra fruit on the top, just garnish it to make it look real bright and pretty. And I think you're going to love this. It does freeze unfilled, by the way, and in the last several hours filled. You don't mind if this is soggy like you do mind with a meringue, which is always supposed to be firm. Now let me show you everything all together. The pistou soup is a traditional French course. Old. The sautéed soft-shelled crab is new to some with its accompanying zucchini-carrot combo, which can also be used as a starter if you wished. And Bob Lynn's bread salad is borrowed. The curried wreath bread is definitely new, but the pavlova is not. I hope you'll try this meal of lusty flavors, and with something blue like the napkins. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, enjoy cooking for your family and friends. I'm glad you joined me.